Miracle of a movie. To me, imagination is a place all by itself, a separated country. Now you've heard of the French nation, the British nation. Well, this is the imagination, a wonderful place. Said by Kris Kringle in Miracle on 34th Street. Valentine Davies worked in that wonderful place. This native New Yorker was, as World War II ended, a playwright and novelist entering his 40s, with not a lot of his resume, but with a lovely notion in his head. After the long, wearying years of war, he gazed at the balloons returning to Broadway and wondered, what could happen if Santa Claus visited our town at Christmas time? Davies had in recent years tried his hand at Hollywood fare. He had received a story credit on the little-noticed 1942 film Syncopation. A friend of his was the noted screenwriter George Seaton, the adapter of Charlie's Aunt and The Song of Bernadette, who was just then turning to directing. Davies told Seaton of his what if, and Seaton suggested in turn, what if it's not really an elf, but a guy who thinks he's Santa? Seaton and Davies collaborated on the script for 18 months, usually working together a couple of nights a week. For Davies, especially, the project was a passion. He thought up situations and dialogue for the screenplay, even as he simultaneously filed away paragraphs that would become a novella of his story. He wrote wherever he was. For a while, he holed up at the Hidden Well Guest Ranch at the corner of Sunset and Paradise in Las Vegas, working on his urban Christmas tale under the hot desert sun. If it is interesting that O. Henry wrote The Gift of the Magi in a corner booth at Pete's Tavern in Lower Manhattan, it's perhaps even more so that another luminous seasonal story of a New York Yuletide was partially crafted in Sin City. Davies and Seaton felt they were onto something big with Miracle on 34th Street. Not everyone agreed. Darryl Zanuck, the powerful head of 20th Century Fox, didn't want to make the film. But he did want Seaton to work on Chicken Every Sunday, a folksy vehicle that Zanuck saw as a sure winner. Seaton offered Zanuck a twofer. I'll do that if you do this. And Miracle got its greenlit. A footnote, Chicken Every Sunday, also based on a Seaton Valentine script, was a modest success in 1949. In the Christmas season of 1946, as Frank Capra's It's a Wonderful Life was eliciting tears from America's moviegoers, Miracle was being filmed on and near 34th Street. For 22 days, cameras and crew invaded Macy's shooting in offices, hallways, locker rooms. They shot the parade, of course, and when final tallying was done, it turned out that more than half of the characters in the movie were played by Macy's employees. The lead actors were hardly superstars, but rather contract pros John Payne and Maureen O'Hara. Production notes prepared for the film's opening predict that 9-year-old Natalie Wood's interpretation of a sweet but Blaze City child would prove a great boost to the career of this newcomer. Maybe it would, but frankly, there was no great buzz attendant upon the release of Miracle. Not least, you might reason since the producers, in their Dubai's wisdom, debuted the film not at Thanksgiving of 1947, but earlier, during the summer. It would take a miracle for the movie to last till Christmas, never mind into any kind of celluloid eternity. But that's the thing about miracles, they're out of our hands. Kate Cameron of the Daily News dutifully made her way to the Roxy in the dog days of 47, expecting not much. She was surprised as anyone when her review read, "Of course, there's a Santa Claus, and I have been too stupid not to have had a sustained faith in the jolly old fellow." She saw the film as not merely funny, but something more with an undefinable spirit quality that raises the spirit of the beholder in a happy, hopeful mood. She gave it 4 stars. As the holidays neared, the lines lengthened at the Roxy. 6 months after opening, the movie was amazingly still running daily. By Thanksgiving, Payne and O'Hara were stars in a higher firmament, and Macy's, for its part, was smart enough to see, just as the Macy's in the movie had, that it was being given a unique marketing opportunity. The handsome O'Hara and Payne were invited to greet the annual parade at Times Square, and they happily assented. The store was happy, Zanuck was happy, Seaton was happy, and Valentine Davies, whose book version was selling copies even as his film was filling seats, was very, very happy. Is Miracle on 34th Street really that good? Absolutely. An often sentimental film, it is redeemed by its constant charm. a sophistication that today seems remarkable. It's beyond comedy, it's wholesome moral, and a slew of terrific performances. The leads are fine, and supporting them is one scene stealer after another. Wood's character, a savvy little girl named Susan, could eat Madeline or Elise for breakfast, and if any film stands as Exhibit A that the immediate post-war years continued a golden age of Hollywood character acting, it would be Miracle on 34th Street. Edmund Gwen's Academy Award-winning performance as Kringle was the pinnacle of an 87-film career. "Now I know there's a Santa Claus," said the 72-year-old actor upon receiving his Best Supporting Actor Oscar. Gene Lockhart's turn as the beleaguered Judge Harper and William Frawley's as the judge backstage political boss were just as sharp. Uncredited in her film debut, Thelma Reader was hilarious. For the reader who has been living under a rock this last half-century, a synopsis of what Miracle is about and why it works so well. An elderly gent named Kris Kringle, played by Gwen, is hired by Doris Walker, a hard-headed Macy's employee, played by O'Hara, to play Santa in the parade and in the store. The wrinkle is Kris insists he really is Santa and behaves as Santa might. He has a generosity of spirit so large that he begins advising customers to shop elsewhere for toys they can't find at Macy's. Even as Mr. Macy's begins to realize that Chris's benevolence reflects well upon his store, another Macy's employee, played with a divine sleaziness by Porter Hall, seeks to have Kringle committed as insane. Fred Gailey, played by Payne, is a lawyer who has eyes for Doris but does not understand her cynicism or why she was willfully infected her daughter, Susan, with an anti-Santa virus. Gailey sets out to win over both Doris and Susan by proving in court that not only there is a Santa Claus, but that he is the fellow who works at Macy's. The denouement, involving U.S. government complicity in the Santa saga, is one of the finest in movie history, and the viewer is left repeating along with Susan the mantra, "I believe." Yes, the film is manipulated. It was released in England as The Big Heart, which surely is what a romanticized British movie about Harold's Father Christmas would be called in the States. But it is never false, a surpassing accomplishment for a fantasy. The movie was perfect for a post-war audience needing to smile, and for the subsequent generation of baby boomers who watched on television. Christmas was the biggest of big deals, and their parents were happy to expose them to a story that boosted the values of kindness, honesty, faith, and that was, at bottom, a critique of commercialization. Ahead of its time in many ways, Doris was a divorced single mom with a job, Kris suffered a trial for lunacy. The movie has never become dated. It remains as huge today. A 1997 poll said 82% of Americans have seen it and 55% have watched it 5 or more times, as it was when it first opened. And at the time, it was a smash. Seaton and Davies won Oscars for their writing, though the film was beaten for Best Picture by Gentleman's Agreement. As with anything so successful, there were several quick attempts to reinterpret it, reinvent it, recapture its magic. In December 1947, and again in 1948, Payne, O'Hara, and Gwen gathered in a radio station to do a live 1-hour version of Miracle for the Lux Radio Theater. Scores of plays based on the script, often blustered by material from Davies' books, have been staged out through the years by regional theaters, and in 1963, music man Meredith Willson wrote the book Music and Lyrics for a Broadway version. Here's Love lasted 334 performances, but is remembered as mediocre. It is noticeable as a big-budget show about Christmas that contributed not a single standard to the Yule canon. When was the last time you sang Big Cow Lawn Balloons or The Plastic Alligator by The Hearth? As if annual showings of the original weren't enough, Miracle on 34th Street was remade as a television movie thrice over, with actors such as Sebastian Cabot and Ed Wynn failing to challenge Gwen's definitive Kringle. Inevitability, it was remade as a featured film, too. In 1994, Sir Richard Attenborough was an affected Santa in A Miracle on 34th Street that was ultimately not a patch on the original. Screenwriter John Hughes, he of Home Alone, ensued slyness and subtlety in favor of harming his audience over the head, pumping up the volume and the schmaltz. In reshaping Miracle's gem-like ending, he substituted a blatant religiosity for Davis's blitz spirituality. When buying your DVD, reach for the original, preferably not the colorized version. While Seaton went on to direct successful films ranging from The Country Girl to Airport, O'Hara enjoying a fine career, and Wood became a high-wattage star, it is fair to say that participation in Miracle on 34th Street was a high point for all involved. In 1991, O'Hara appeared on Johnny Carson's Tonight Show, told the story of coming from Mass in New York City only days earlier. Two little boys follow her and finally summoned the courage to tug on her coat. "Are you the lady that knows Santa Claus?" one asked. "Yes, I know him well," O'Hara replied. She told Carson, 100 years from now, long after I'm nailed into the box, you'll still be seeing Maureen O'Hara in Miracle on 34th Street every Christmas and The Quiet Man on St. Patty's Day. As we view Miracle a century on, we'll still be wondering at its magic. Valentine Davies died in 1961 after a successful screenwriting career that never saw him again find quite the same place in that separate country, that wonderful place, the imagination, but he found it once. It was a miracle, somehow out of his hands. Picture descriptions. The talents of stars O'Hara and Payne, old Edmund Gwenn and young Natalie Wood, and most important, wordsmith Valentine Davies, converge at a cosmically correct moment in 1947. The film gets off to a rip-snorting start when, at the parade, Kringle scolds a drunk Santa. High above the hullabaloo and not particularly interested in the balloons, Susan meets her mom's new suitor, Mr. Gailey. Kringle and Gailey have found their way into the Walkers' home, but the big question is, how to capture their hearts. Kringle's whiskers are real, alright, but that's not enough to convince little Susan of Santa's existence. Susan fell under Kringle's spell, monkeys around. The crucial evidence is presented. In the remake, the proof didn't have to do with letters to Santa, but with the "In God We Trust" slogan on legal tender, pointing up only to the difference between 1947 America and the 1990s version. If any agency of the United States government says that this man is the one and only Santa Claus, then who are we to dispute it? At the old folks' home, Kringle shows off the glorious tree. Susan's present isn't underneath, but it's waiting. A pocket full of miracles. The film remake was carefully not to implicitate Macy's, changing the store's name to Kohl's. In the Payne role, rising star Dylan McDermott got some acting practice for The Practice. Here's Love was a musical but not lyrical. On TV, neither Wynn nor Cabinet might us forget Gwen.